marriage is the longest of any presidential couple in history. But he will also be remembered by history as a president who, during his time in office, approached the challenges facing this great nation with a quiet wisdom, challenges that are all too familiar right now in 2024.
The struggle for human rights overrides all differences of color or nation or language. Those who hunger for freedom, who thirst for human dignity, and who suffer for the sake of justice, they are the patriots of this cause. I believe with all my heart that America must always stand for these basic human rights at home and abroad. That is both our history and our destiny. America did not invent human rights. In a very real sense, it's the other way around. Human rights invented America. Ours was the first nation in the history of the world to be founded explicitly on such an idea. Our social and political progress has been based on one fundamental principle: the value and importance of the individual. The fundamental force that unites us is not kinship or place of origin or religious preference. The love of liberty is a common blood that flows in our American veins.
Taken as a whole, his life is a portrait of a man who represents the very best this nation has to offer, a legacy as a public servant and as a humanitarian, who is a beacon of decency, something his longtime friend, President Joe Biden, knows firsthand.
America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman and humanitarian. And Jill and I lost a dear friend. I've been hanging out with Jimmy Carter for over 50 years. Jimmy Carter stands as a model of what it means to live a life of meaning and purpose, a life of principle, faith, and humility. His life dedicated to others. Decency. Decency. Everybody deserves a shot. Everybody. One of the reasons why we're looked to by the rest of the world, for the bulk of our nationhood, we've laid out what our values are. We've said what we believe. It's not just in the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, but there's a feeling. The rest of the world looks to us. And he was worth looking to.
He was worth looking to. In the immortal words of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., quote, "Only when it is dark enough can you see the stars." In this moment in our nation's history, Jimmy Carter's life and legacy shine especially bright. It's where we start today with my friend, our longtime NBC News colleague, former Carter White House intern. Our dear friend Brian Williams is here. Thank you so much for taking a break from all the things that occupy your post-MSNBC life to talk to us on this occasion.
Well, hello, my friend. I miss you, and thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for having me on. I will take your cue and your brilliant opening segment today and call this a celebration of a life well lived.
What does he mean today with all of the turns toward darkness that if you go back and look at some of his speeches, he tried so hard to level with the American people, and he wasn't always appreciated for doing so. But what does his life mean to you today?
Well, a life of decency, of profound intellect, and I hope his intellect is not a quality that gets lost in the coverage that will come in these next several days. The author of 30 books. He just had this fiery brain. Studied nuclear physics, let's not forget. And let's not forget as well, in Carter's case, he was a decent man who defeated a decent man, Gerald Ford, who just simply could not get the film of Watergate and that era off of him. So this new young crowd from Georgia, of all places, emerged on the national stage. I think another thing I'm seeing creep into the coverage is that he was our best ex-president. And I have to credit Jonathan Alter, a bona fide Carter scholar and biographer, who appeared on this network yesterday in the minutes following word of President Carter's death, who said that that appellation, the best ex-president, Carter found hurtful. He had no personal vanity, but he was vain about his reputation, his accomplishments, his presidency. He was proud of the fact that he put, solar panels on the roof of the White House before such a thing was even discussed in the public domain. So I think, yes, he had the best ex-presidency in the history of all the men who have led our nation. But to your point, the accomplishments of his presidency, his personal crowning achievement, the Camp David Accords, just would not have happened had there not been a man named Jimmy Carter on earth. And that was a calling. Let's not forget that his own sense of religion called him to. He thought peace in the Middle East, as a Christian American man, president of the United States, was his duty.
His faith was something he wore so comfortably, which you don't always see in politics in either party. That also makes him feel different from any figures on the stage these days.
Yes, and I'll throw the following hand grenade into this remembrance and say that the presidency of Jimmy Carter, his emergence as a national political figure, was the first event that exposed the political support of American evangelicals as something more transactional than I think any of us wanted to believe or admit. There will never be a more evangelical than Jimmy Carter, born-again Christian, taught Bible study until his body failed him and he was forced to stop appearing with his small congregation in Plains on Sundays. The evangelical community instead went with a divorced Hollywood actor. The rest, as we know, is history. And the second hand grenade is that his piety, combined with his hair shirt level of thrift, his flintiness, the fact that he was wearing clothing in his last years on earth that had hung in the White House 45 years ago, the fact that he and Mrs. Carter kept an igloo cooler on the back porch of their modest Plains, Georgia house as an overflow during the holidays if their refrigerator got too full. He had no interest in physical effects. He had no interest in the trappings of the job, something he later admitted was a mistake on his part. He glorified the presidency to such a degree that I think that, combined with his lack of political Washington acumen, with his kind of lack of personal stature. When Jimmy Carter walked into the room, because he was shorter than most in height, it was possible to be at a White House reception and not know yet that he was there. Part of that is his fault. He ordered them to stop playing Hail to the Chief when the president entered the room. He wanted to get us away from the Nixon era imperial presidency, where Nixon had outfitted the guards outside the West Wing in ridiculous, though blissfully short-lived outfits and the like. Jimmy Carter wanted to be who he was, which was something very different entirely.
Brian Williams, we miss you so much. Flintiness and hand grenades have never sort of hung together so poetically in my life. It's all telling a story of humility that's unrecognizable in today's politics. Why do you think that is?
Our times, our eras have changed. Social media has changed our society in ways that we are living in a time of great historians. They are not yet caught up on the change we're living every day, from X to Facebook to Instagram to Truth Social to on and on and on. It has forced upon us an era of celebrity, where ordinary folks walking the earth every day heretofore now have followers of their own. This is an intense and profound dynamic. It allows people, after a lifetime of celebrities being the people we would watch on television and in movies, massive public figures, we've entered the era where, you too can be a thing in your own realm. That has changed everything. Our politics have taken a rancid, partisan turn. Media is now available in all bite-sized forms. You can wake up in America and watch only the network you agree with. That limits the scope of what you're going to get. And let's not forget how much of U.S. history this man was alive for. We're only 248 years old. We're talking about the death of a 100-year-old former president, the first president born in a hospital. Put it this way, Jimmy Carter's father was born only 31 years after the death of Abraham Lincoln. We're about to ring in 2025. It brings with it a particularly unsure future. We're all in this together, just as we were watching this young Georgian take office and figuring out who our new president was back in 1976.
How did you come to intern in the Carter White House?
Well, it wasn't through my formidable college education. I have had none, still don't, and I ran into a guy in Washington D.C. who was my age. He was a college student at Catholic University, and he had to vacate his White House internship to attend to some family matters in St. Louis, and I interviewed for it. So supremely unqualified was I. I had a West Wing all-access pass. I had no business in that position. I did real work and enjoyed it. I owned exactly one blue blazer, which I purchased with my Sears employee discount in Middletown, New Jersey. I wore it every day for a year. No one seemed to notice because it is the coin of the realm, the wrapping of all men in Washington, D.C. It was fascinating. I had several encounters with President Carter. Usually either my hands or knees were shaking. I had the experience of hearing someone clear their throat behind me while doing Xerox copies in the West Wing. It happened to be Vice President Walter Mondale. So just a crazy chapter in my life. And Carter, of course, in the years that followed, was the most surprised that my life had resulted in any success and got an enormous kick out of all the times we encountered each other, journalist and former president, here and around the world. And he was always quite lovely to me.
I mean, Brian, the way you describe him, I imagine he was a president who was, in some cases, probably more at ease around his own interns than some of the other, heads of state or titans of business or other dignitaries that came in. Can you tell us about some of your encounters with the president as an intern?
Yeah, yes, I think if he had a slogan to put on the door of the Oval Office, and it's no knock on him, it's just the way he was wired, it would be bright, be brief, be gone. He would look up from his desk. He would stop the conversation he was in to find out what fresh